Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to my channel. It is I here, the poor doctor. And we're gonna discuss dating as a music therapist. I'm here to spill the tea. I have my tea right here. It's not necessarily tea. The drink for today, it's hot water. Um, this is supposed to be a lime, but it kind of looks like a lemon. I mean, they're technically the same thing. And then I put apple cider vinegar in here. That's why it's kind of a little cloudy. I thought that buying limes would make my hot water slash sparkling beverages taste like margaritas, but it doesn't. Maybe if you close your eyes, maybe that. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, let's discuss dating as a music therapist. So, um, as music therapists, we are, very wonderful individuals. We're very open to like pretty much anything. I mean, I'm open to anything, flexible, you know what I'm saying? But like when it comes to dating, it's kind of difficult, and I'm gonna kind of just go through the process with you guys. So first, you're in college, you're freshman in college, and everybody freshman year of college, like they want to drink, they want to party, they want to date, and you can do that. I mean, it's gonna be hard because most people have 5 classes, 15 credits, and then you're over here like 18 credits, 12 classes. It's ridiculous, but it's actually easier. I thought the freshman year of college was actually easier than in high school. And the reason why is because like in high school I was in a lot of like ensembles. So like I did orchestra, I did band, I did choir. Marching band took up a decent amount of time, and the musical took up a decent amount of time. And even though my college didn't have a marching band, thank the Lord, because I only did marching band to meet gentlemen, and it worked, okay? Like, just saying. But I didn't really like it. I actually didn't like marching band at all. We'll go into why another day. But, so I didn't have marching band in college, which was a wonderful thing, and I felt like it freed up a significant amount of my time. But marching band in college, even like if you participate, it's not like marching band in high school. I feel like it is a lot more laid back. And you're not really obligated to do it for 4 years. Like in high school, it was kind of like if you dropped out of marching band, it was like the end of the world. Like, what do you mean you're taking a year off? Like that. And even in college, like I was in a sorority in college, it was kind of the same thing. Like, if you took a semester off from the sorority, like it really wasn't that big. You thought it would be a big deal, but it really wasn't that big a deal. Anyway, moving on. So I did freshman year of college. I was in concert band and choir, and that wasn't like a choice. That was a requirement. And that's the thing, is ensembles are requirements. Lessons are requirements. So it's a lot. You can do the musical, you could join the dance team, you could join a sorority. Like, those aren't requirements, those are clubs. But usually the stuff, like the extracurriculars that I did in high school, like band, orchestra, choir, lessons, like that stuff ends up being classes in college. And 9 times out of 10, you gotta do them. So it's hard to balance like your caseload. It's hard to balance your classes and the ensembles and the private lessons, but hey, like if you want to date, or if you want to fool around or go to parties, like if it means that much to you, you'll make it happen. And you can make it happen as a freshman, even as a sophomore. Like sophomore year, freshman versus sophomore year, like sophomore year the classes start to get harder, but the schedule is pretty much the same. At least for me, like I still had my ensemble requirements and blah blah blah, and then I still had Janets and stuff like that. So again, you could totally date. Like, if you want it bad enough, you can do it. Then junior year, it starts to get kind of difficult, because that's when we start practicum. And at my school, like, we started practicum sophomore year, actually. But junior year is really when you dive in. And nobody knows this, but you need 1,200 clinical hours. Like, that's the minimum requirement to be a music therapist. It really doesn't matter if it's through practicum or if it's through internship. That's just the minimum, like, that you need. But the way my school did it was you had to have at least 200 hours in practicum over the course of so many semesters, and then your internship had to be 1,000. But that's not set in stone. That's just the way they divided it up at my school. Anyway, so practicum, okay, how do I say this nicely? So a lot of majors in college have internships, and the internships end up being, like, yeah, you could do a summer internship. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, in-school internships. And, like, the internships end up being, like, 2-3 hours a week, and then at the end of the semester it's like 50 hours, and sometimes some schools, for certain majors, they call those internships. Okay, then nursing majors, they have clinicals, which is again the same thing, where it's like you go 2-3 hours a week ish, you end up with like 60 hours at the end of the semester. Those are clinicals. Practicum is the exact same thing. It's just a different word. Because in practicum, like, you go 2-3 hours a week. You end up getting like 50 hours by the end of the semester. For our music therapy practicums, like some semesters I would go 8 hours a week, and then other semesters I would go like 2 hours a week, because it really depended. So it would depend on the placement. But when there was an opportunity to like go 8 hours a week, you went 8 hours a week, because you didn't know if the next semester you would have like a 1 hour a week placement. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, the point of the matter is that for certain majors, like internship, clinical, and practicum end up being the same thing. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think that they're separate, but they're not. So, that being said, when you're dating somebody outside of music therapy, like, they're not going to understand what a practicum is. You know, they're not going to get that, like, it's the same thing as a clinical. Sometimes it's the same thing as an internship. Like, it's the same amount of time, it's the same amount of effort, because you're going into the field and you're working, or at least attempting, you know, because practicum, they kind of like practicum is literally like you stick half of your foot into a puddle. And then like when you get to the harder practicums, like you stick your whole foot into a puddle. But that's it. Like, it's really not that difficult. But when you're starting, like, because you haven't done an internship, you haven't worked, so you think it's really hard. And that's the thing. It is hard because you haven't done this before, like you're new. But people don't get it. First of all, most people don't know what a practicum even is. Like, you know, they don't realize that practicum, clinical, and sometimes internships are all the same thing, you know? And then they don't understand that it's difficult because you never worked in the field before. You know, I always envied the music education majors because most of them taught lessons, like they taught private lessons. So when it came to their practicum, like they kind of already knew what to do. It was just they were doing it with a class of kids instead of one kid. And I always envied them because, like, we never had that opportunity. It was like you were going in blind. Like, you know. But, so again, like, most people don't understand. Most people don't even know what a practicum is. So, when you're dating somebody, especially if you're dating somebody that's not a music therapist, even if they're music ed, you know what I'm saying, or nursing, you know, it's always important to explain that instead of saying the word practicum, like, explain, I'm going into the field, like, I'm going to a school, I'm going to the hospital, you know, I'm going to do music therapy, you know, I'm going to actually work with clients. Like, it's important to explain that, so then that way they'll understand, instead of using like a blanket term, practicum, because most people, especially if you're in college, they don't know what practicum means. Now, that brings me to my next topic. So I do not date individuals that are in the same field as me, and the reason why is because I get pretty competitive. So I never dated a music therapist, nor will I ever, because then I'll get like too competitive. So there you go. So I always dated people that like weren't into music therapy. They did science, they did business. Yeah, actually, that was pretty much it. Science and business. Like, I didn't, now that I think about it, I never dated anybody that was a teacher, that, like, majored in education. Like, of course, people teach and tutor, but that doesn't really count, you know? Anyway, so that was pretty much it. But that being said, is I always had to explain, like, you know, what I was doing, in the sense, like, practicum, for example. Sometimes engineering majors, like, sometimes they got what practicum was, because some schools, like, engineers do have to do a practicum, like, their clinical experience, they call it practicum, so sometimes they understand, but, most majors don't know what the word practicum means. So that's my story, because, like, I never dated anybody that was a music therapist. Now, if you date somebody that is a music therapist, even if you go to a, like, big school, it's still a small world. So keep that in mind. Yes, they might understand what practica means, and they're going to understand your, like, course load, and you're probably going to see them all the time, even if you go to a big school. But, like, just keep that in mind, that, like, you know, it better, and I'm not, like, you just know that if you date a music therapist and you're a music therapist, like, you better know that it's, like, probably, you better stick together, like, because you're going to run into each other, and you're going to have to be civil, and 9 times out of 10, usually guys aren't mature in that way. They're not able to, like, keep it civil. Obviously, I date men, and I don't know. I don't like women at all. I can't with the emotions, but then men drive me nuts too. So, I guess I tolerate the men difficulties over a woman's difficulties, if that makes sense. So anyway, moving on. So anyway, you finished practicum, you did your 200 plus hours, and then it's time to move on to internship. Now this is something, again, that's kind of difficult for people to understand. So as I've mentioned before, like, I dated people that were in business and in science, and both of those two professions, like, internships are pretty competitive. Believe it or not, like, I actually didn't know that for business, an internship is competitive, really depending on the field. Like, business major, well, now I know, because I am getting an MBA, but, so, like, business majors, especially finance, because that's, like, my concentration, it's difficult to get, like, a finance internship at a really well-known company, and that's what most people strive for. They strive for the big banks, especially, like, in Pittsburgh. Like, PNC's capital is, like, right in Pittsburgh, you know, so, because it's a Pittsburgh-based bank, and a lot of, I mean, that's, like, wonderful if you get an internship with them, you know, but it's, like, really competitive. And then other places too, like Merrill Lynch or Goldman Sachs. Like, everybody's trying to get those big name companies for their internships. So, like, business majors sometimes understand science, sometimes understands too, because, again, like, if they're going for a research internship, they're also trying to get the big names, or if they're, like, pharmaceutical, again, trying to get the big name, like, internships. But the thing that they don't understand is that, like, if you don't get an internship at PNC, you can still get a decent internship at TD Bank, You know, it's still a bank. It's still pretty darn good. Like, even if you're working at a local branch. Whereas as a music therapist, we don't really have that ability. Like, it's all or nothing. Like, you either get an internship or you don't get one, because we don't have as many possibilities. And bio is the same way. If you're into, like, if you're dating somebody who's into, like, research or pharmaceutical research, like, it's the same thing. Like, you know, maybe you won't get, like, that Johnson & Johnson internship, but you could get, like, an internship at a local CVS, you know? And we don't really have that ability as music therapists. We have national roster internships, but those are, like, far and few between. And then we have local internships, but again, far and few between. So, like, it's kind of almost like, at least for me, like, I had 2 national roster internships I could choose from, or 2 local internships I could choose from. You know, like, that was it. Whereas, like, the person I was with at the time, like, had 5 big names, you know, and then 10 little names. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, so we do run the risk as a music therapist, like, it is very competitive, and we do run the risk of not getting an internship and having a gap year. And that's a story, that fear is a story for another day that I experienced, but it's really difficult to explain that to a significant other, let alone your family. Like, my parents didn't understand at all. But that's how it is. Now, what ended up happening to me is I was so fortunate. I ended up getting a national roster internship in a state that only offered 1 internship. Like, they didn't even offer a local internship, not to my knowledge, at least. So it was really competitive, like, getting that internship, and then, you know, you had to stay, and, like, and your internship is 40 hours a week. And that's another thing that people don't understand, is that I always explain my internship as residency, because technically it was a residency. Like, I was on call. I did do 40 plus hours a week. Some weeks I did 60 hours a week, you know. Some weeks I had to go in at odd hours. I lived on campus, like, you know, so that it was easy to get there in an emergency. So like, we call it internship, but it really should be called residency, because that's, like, technically, like, it's the same, it's kind of the same thing. It's just that obviously doctors, like, in residency do more hours and they do more work, but it's, like, for people's understanding, it's easier to explain it as a residency, because, like, then the general public will get it more. Residence also, because I knew this now, residency also is very competitive, and there's only a couple to go around. So, like, if you don't get into residency, you know, you do have that, like, fear of having a gap year. So, like, it's more similar for the community to understand, you know. Maybe, like, educationally, residency might not be the correct term, but for, like, a significant other or family member, I suggest using that term instead of using the term internship, especially with the older population, because I still run into these individuals, like, who think that, like, internship is just bringing your supervisor coffee. I still run into those people, and I don't know how many times I'm going to have to tell them that, no, it's actually free labor, you know? Anyway, moving on. So internship is really competitive to get into, first of all. And second of all, there's a lot of responsibility once you're there, and you have to continue. Like, it was hard for you to get in, but it's even harder for you to stay. And that's something that you have to explain to people. Again, like science, people might get it, but business, usually they don't get it. So that's something that you do have to understand, like explain that, like, oh, you know, this is 40 hours a week for 6 months, and I have to, like, you know, chug it, like, go through it. And it does go by really fast. Like, I will be honest, 6 months seems like a long time, 9 months seems like a long time, but it's really, in reality, it's really not. It's only like a chunk of your life, you know? But yeah, so that's like kind of difficult to understand. And then I remember when I was in internship, like so it was just so exhausting because you're getting used, like you're going to meetings, you have a caseload, you have clients, you know, you have sessions, you're session planning, you're meeting, you're doing notes. So it's like all this responsibilities that you've never taken on before. And then you come home and you just want to crash, but like you can't because you got assignments to do. So like obviously during my internship I was dating somebody that didn't live close by, clearly, because I lived like on the hospital, like, you know, on the campus of the hospital. So we usually had to drive to see each other, and most of the time I didn't want to drive, even though it wasn't that far of a drive. It was just like I was just so exhausted, and it's important to because I didn't do this. It's important to explain that, you know, I'm taking on a new role. Like I'm taking on more responsibilities, so my body isn't used to it. I'm exhausted. I need a day to myself. And honestly, that's usually what I needed. I needed like a whole day to sit and watch TV. So like that's also, if you need it, it's important to mention it. Okay, so then let's move on here, and then you get your job. And I was really fortunate. I got hired like straight out of my internship, so there was no downtime. But then once you get your job, like you have more responsibilities, and we'll talk about that another day because they're not all good. Like in your internship, all the responsibilities that were added on were good responsibilities and preparing you for the real world, whereas like your job responsibilities aren't necessarily always good. Anyway, so we'll talk about that another day. But the point of the matter is that you have a lot of responsibilities now. At least at my first job, I had a lot of medical responsibilities that I didn't have before, and I was on call a lot. That too, because like at my job, so like I was a music therapist, yes, but I was also a certified nursing assistant, and that training, let me tell you, like certified nursing assistants, like they get, like if you have that on your resume, it's like a wonderful thing. But like it literally takes like 6 months. And then here I am, like I spent like 5 years of my life doing music therapy, and people don't like get it, you know? But anyway, so that's another thing too, that like, you know, you have more responsibilities, you're on call, and again, like people don't understand. Like I remember I was dating this guy, and he was just like, why are you on call? You're not a doctor. And he was right, okay? Like, yes, why am I on call? I am not a doctor. Why am I part of the emergency staff? Like, I'm not a doctor. And I hate to put it that way, but like as music therapists, like we, you know, it's great and we advocate for ourselves, but if somebody is lying on the hospital bed dying, like they do not need music, okay? Like they need medical staff. That's kind of one of the main reasons why, like, I, you know, got all this medical training, because like that's what the patient needs at that moment. Like music is great. It's great for like helping patients recover, but if they are in a dire situation, like I'm sorry, but like we really can't, our guitar isn't magic. And like I hate to say it, but this guy, he was right, but it was like, I can't, you know, because we advocate so much for us as music therapists, if they're going to put us on call and make us an important staff member, you can't really like argue. You can't say, oh, why am I on the emergency staff? Like I won't save lives. Like you can't tell your boss that. So even though he was right, it was like, I felt like I was caught between a rock and a hard place, because it's like, well, I work so hard to advocate for this position and they're paying me, so I really can't talk back. Like I can't bite the hand that feeds me. Anyway, but that's difficult too. Like it is difficult to explain that to somebody, and Yeah, so there you go. um, so moving on. Long story short, oh yeah, most important. So most important fact before I wrap this up. Most important is that no matter who you date, I have noticed that the only people who truly understand what we do as music therapists are other music therapists and doctors of osteopathic medicine, otherwise known as a DO. So a DO is a doctor who, like, they focus more on how the body can heal itself, and they think about holistic healing first, usually, before they move on to the medical approach. But they know just as much as a doctor. Like, medical doctors and doctors of osteopathic medicine, like, they know equally as much information. It's just the, like, philosophy of the practice. DOs think about holistic healthcare first before moving on to medical, like, healing. At least, like, that's like the philosophy. Who knows if they actually do it, but that's what they're trained in. Whereas a medical doctor, they, like, specifically focus on medical. Now, new doctors, like, now they're making everybody do holistic healthcare. And sometimes, like, in my field, like, you know, I was holistic, but I still had to learn the medical side. So, like, right now they kind of are, like, going back and forth. But if you're working with an older doctor, or if you're dating an older doctor, I mean, I don't know what you're into, but if you're, like, with somebody who went to school, like, went to medical school a while ago, then they're probably not gonna know music therapy. But if you go to, like, if you're dating, like, a younger DO, you know, or sometimes even younger nurses, sometimes nurses have to take holistic courses in, like, treatment. Sometimes they'll know too. But if they're older, or if they did their training a while ago, they're not going to know. But that's, like, just some food for thought. So DOs and other music therapists, I found, are the two professions that actually know what music therapists do. As I mentioned, I dated business majors and science majors, so they didn't know. And yeah, and I don't think anybody else really knows either. Like, history majors, sometimes even recreation therapists don't even know. Like, I've run into that on several occasions with my supervisors who are recreation therapists, like, not knowing what a music therapist does. Art therapists, physical therapists, like, they don't understand either. And the main takeaway here is that you, as a significant other, it is not your responsibility to educate on your profession, which it's easier said than done, because you're so used to educating and advocating and talking about music therapy and talking about the benefits of music therapy. Sometimes automatically you just start to do it in your relationship, but just know that that is not your responsibility, okay? Like, your responsibility is to be a significant other. Your responsibility is to, like, you know, give the kisses and say the good morning text, and I don't know, I don't cook for my man, but maybe you do. So, but those are your responsibilities, you know? It's not to educate, okay? It's not to talk about music therapy. You can rant. You can say, like, I had a really difficult day because, like, none of my clients showed up and I lost, like, revenue. Like, you can rant about that, you know? But your job isn't to talk about how wonderful music therapy is, or how hard music therapy is, or how, like, drained you are. Like, no, that is not your responsibility as a significant other. And that's, like, the major takeaway here, is that it is not your job to advocate or educate your significant other on your profession. They are not going to get it unless they, like, go to work with you and actually see what you do. They're not going to get it, and that is totally fine. I mean, as a woman, there have been, like, yeah, you guys know how history works, okay? Like, As a woman, the man comes home, well, in history, let's say, the man comes home from his job and, like, you know, first thing they ask, what'd you do all day, you know? Because I don't know what it is, but, like, since the beginning of time, I feel like men think that women don't do anything, you know, even though, like, even if you're a stay-at-home mom and you, like, run the house, like, clearly you did stuff, but the man is always gonna feel like you didn't do anything because you didn't go to work. Okay, and that's been like a theme that's been going on for ages and ages and ages. So, like, even though, yeah, like, here I am, I'm working, I'm a music therapist, you know, but there's always been this mystery where men don't really understand what the woman does all day. And I will gladly contribute to that mystery, as should you, okay? Like, as a music therapist, you should. All they need to know is that, like, oh, I work at a hospital. Oh, these are my hours. Like, oh, I have my own health care. You know what I'm saying? Like, work was really hard. They cut funding for next year. Like these are things that you should talk about when it comes to your job. But don't advocate, don't educate. It is not, unless your man is on the executive board at your hospital, there's no reason for you, or your woman, you know, because you could be a man music therapist and dating a woman in business, unless your significant other, or whatever, you know, man, woman, whatever you guys want to do. But the point that I'm trying to say is that if your significant other is on the board of whatever place you're working and you do have to talk about work and you do have to advocate for yourself, then go for it. But, like, if not, which was always the case with me, it's not your job. It is not your responsibility to advocate or educate. There you go. Last but finally not least is settling in your relationship. So I've seen this occur on multiple occasions, especially for women, because music therapy is a woman-dominated field. And again, it's difficult for people to understand what a music therapist does. So I've seen on multiple occasions women settling with their high school boyfriend, or settling with their college boyfriend, or settling like with someone they met at their internship. And because of these two factors, because, like, you know, music therapy is mostly woman dominated and most people don't get it. As we mentioned before, it is not your job to advocate, it's not your job to educate, okay? You date whoever you want. And just because there's not that many men out there in the music therapy world doesn't mean you're not going to meet some great guy. I mean, as I'm, like I said, I mean, I interned at a hospital. One of my practicums was at a hospital. I interned at a hospital. I worked at a hospital. I met several lovely, handsome men who were doctors or residents becoming doctors. I'm sorry, residents. Who were already doctors, dentists even. So, like, there's plenty of room to meet a mate, like, in your profession, even if you're a music therapist. There's no reason that you should settle, because, like, there's plenty of room for us to meet, like, wonderful men. And same goes for, like, a man who's a music therapist. Like, you know, when you work in these rehab facilities or hospitals, like, there's plenty of room to meet, like, lovely female nurses or lovely female physical therapists. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you have to kind of think outside of the field, and know that, like, it's not your responsibility to educate your significant other, and know that, like, there's plenty, like, you're going to be working with a million different smart individuals. There's plenty of space to find a significant other when you're working. I mean, think about it. You could be a music therapist married to a doctor. Once I found that out, I was like, I ain't settling for anything. Like, right? I mean, right? So there you go. Those are the two major takeaways. I know this video was kind of long, but I kind of wanted to walk you guys through the process. Obviously, if you're not really into dating and you're more into, if you're not really into, like, a relationship and you're more into dating, that's so easy because you don't need to tell them anything. Like, again, you just tell them, like, oh, I'm free this weekend, and then go on a date or whatever. Oh, I'm free tonight. Come on over, you know? That's 10 times easier than, like, being in a relationship. When you're in a relationship, I don't know why, but, like, you just find a need to explain, and just stop explaining. Don't educate. Just have fun. Just have fun and think about, don't settle. Think about that lovely doctor who you could potentially be married to in the future since you didn't settle. And yeah, and there you go. So it's really not, it's difficult, but like, just think about the future. Think about yourself. Be selfish, because this is the time to be selfish. And there you go. So, best of luck dating, my friends. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.